The world as you know it has folded into the velvet embrace of the night, and while the rest of the house remains anchored in the heavy, rhythmic breathing of deep sleep, a different kind of life is just beginning to stir. Look closely at the corner of the room, past the shadows where the digital glow of the clock flickers a sharp, neon 2:03 a.m. There is a subtle shift in the air, a microscopic rustle of bedding that signals the start of a hidden dawn. For most of us, this hour is a void of silence, but for a tiny creature weighing no more than a handful of starlight, this is the most important moment of the day. As the temperature drops and the artificial hum of the human world finally settles into a hush, a pair of dark obsidian eyes catch the moonlight, scanning the familiar boundaries of a glass-walled kingdom. We often mistake these small companions for simple, sleepy pets that exist merely to be cute during the daylight hours, but the creature emerging from the depths of the sawdust is a master of the darkness, a nocturnal explorer governed by an ancient, wild clock that has never been reset by domestication. Within the quietest reaches of your home, a transformation is taking place that defies the stillness of the night. This isn't just a pet waking up for a midnight snack. It is the awakening of a survivalist whose every instinct is fine-tuned to the frequencies of the shadows. While you are lost in dreams, your hamster is experiencing a surge of primal energy, a neurological system alert that tells them the coast is finally clear and the danger of the sun has passed. The silence of the room isn't empty to them. It is a complex tapestry of sounds and scents that are invisible to the human senses. Every creak of the floorboard and every soft sigh from the sleeping giant nearby is a data point in their nightly patrol. You might think your home is a sanctuary of peace at this hour, but for the tiny occupant of that cage, the night is a high-stakes mission of territory, movement, and preparation. Welcome to a world that exists right beside your pillow, yet remains almost entirely unseen. A secret life of industry and obsession that unfolds in the blue-tinted light of the moon. Tonight, we aren't just looking at a pet in a cage. We are stepping into the mind of a subterranean architect and a marathon runner who will travel miles without ever leaving the room. Stay with us until the very end, because the final revelation about how these creatures perceive you in the dark will change the way you look at your small friend forever. Before the first light of morning erases the evidence of their labor, let us descend into the silent hours to witness what really happens when the world goes dark and the hamster takes charge. As the neon clock ticks forward, the soft rustling under the bedding intensifies, marking the end of a long, static day and the beginning of a vibrant, hidden era. To the casual observer, a hamster's life seems defined by daylight lethargy, a state of perpetual dozing that looks like simple laziness, but in reality, their bodies are masterpieces of energy conservation, waiting for the precise moment when the environment shifts in their favor. They are not merely nocturnal, they are crepuscular survivors. Biological machines programmed to thrive in the delicate, blue-tinted windows of twilight and the deep, protective velvet of the night. This isn't a choice, but a hardwired legacy from their wild ancestors who roamed the arid plains, where the sun was a death sentence and the cooling air of dusk was the only signal of safety. As the room's temperature drops by just a few degrees and the heavy, chaotic vibrations of human activity fade into a rhythmic silence, the hamster's brain enters a state of high-definition awareness. The first sign of life is a tiny, twitching nose emerging from a mound of aspen shavings, filtering the still air for the complex chemical signatures of their territory. Then comes a long, slow stretch, a feline-like extension of the spine that shakes off the stiffness of a 12-hour slumber. This is the system reboot phase, where their heart rate begins to climb and their whiskers, those incredibly sensitive tactile sensors, begin to vibrate at a frenetic pace, mapping out the darkness with more precision than any camera. In the wild, this moment of emergence is the most dangerous time of their lives. And even here, in the absolute safety of a climate-controlled room, that ancient caution remains. They pause at the entrance of their burrow, frozen like a statue, listening to the house breathe. They aren't just waking up, they are assessing the tactical landscape, confirming that the giants are asleep and the predators of the day have vanished. For the hamster, the night isn't a time of rest, but a theater of opportunity where every shadow is a corridor and every silence is an invitation to finally I truly start living. The awakening is only the beginning. What follows is a calculated, high-stakes inspection of a kingdom that has changed in the hours since the hamster last saw it. In the mind of this tiny sentinel, the cage is not a static box, but a shifting landscape that must be re-verified every single night. This is the nightly patrol, a silent and obsessive ritual where every inch of territory is subjected to a rigorous audit. They move with a strange, liquid grace, staying low to the ground, their whiskers sweeping the air like radar arrays to detect the slightest atmospheric shift. You might hear the faint, rhythmic scratching of claws against wood or plastic, or the soft, dry rustle of substrate being rearranged, but to the hamster, these are the sounds of vital work. The first priority isn't food, it is security. They visit every corner, every hideout, and every tunnel entrance, pausing to leave scent marks from the small glands on their hips, re-establishing their invisible border over the fading smells of the previous day. As they navigate this miniature world, their reliance on vision fades, replaced by a sophisticated internal map built entirely on fragrance and touch. To us, the cage looks identical to how we left it, but to the hamster, a moved water bottle or a new chew toy is a monumental geographical event that requires immediate investigation. They approach these changes with a mixture of intense curiosity and deep-seated caution, their bodies ready to coil and flee at the slightest hint of an unfamiliar vibration. There is a profound sense of purpose in these movements. They are checking the integrity of their burrows, ensuring the walls of their world haven't been breached by the giants that roam the house during the light. You might see them pause, standing perfectly still on their hind legs, their ears swiveling toward the distant hum of a refrigerator, or the wind rattling a window pane. In this silence, they are the undisputed masters of their domain, a subterranean architect conducting a final walkthrough before the real labor of the night begins. This patrol is the foundation of their confidence, a silent confirmation that, for one more night, their small, secret universe is safe and entirely their own. Once the territory is secured and the boundaries are re-established, the silence of the room is suddenly shattered by a rhythmic metallic whirring that sounds like a miniature turbine spinning into life. This is the peak of the night, the moment when the hamster's internal engine shifts from a cautious crawl into a full-throttle sprint. To us, watching from the outside, it looks like a moment of simple, adorable play. A tiny creature running in circles on a plastic wheel for no apparent reason. But if you could step inside that small, furry head, you would realize that this isn't play at all. It is a desperate biological necessity. You might wonder if they run because they are bored or because they enjoy the sensation of the wind in their fur. But the truth is far more existential. In the wild, a hamster's survival depends entirely on their ability to cover vast distances under the cover of darkness, often traveling between 5 to 6 miles every single night in a frantic search for food and mates. Even though this hamster is living in a controlled environment where every meal is provided, that ancient, restless map in their brain hasn't been deleted. As the wheel spins faster and faster, blurring into a translucent circle of motion, the hamster isn't just exercising. They are responding to a primal command that says they haven't gone far enough yet to stay alive. Their tiny heart beats at a staggering pace, and their muscles move with a precision that would rival a professional athlete, driven by a surge of neurochemicals that only trigger in the dead of night. They aren't running in a cage in a suburban bedroom. In their mind, they are crossing miles of open desert, dodging shadows and racing against the impending sunrise. Some individuals are so driven by this instinct that they will clock over 10 kilometers in a single session, a feat of endurance that is almost impossible to comprehend for a creature of their size. This wheel frenzy is the ultimate expression of their wild heritage, a bridge between their domestic reality and the vast, unforgiving landscapes of their ancestors. It is a lonely, high-speed marathon, performed in the dark while the rest of the world stands still, proving that even the smallest heart can carry the spirit of a long-distance traveler. Once the adrenaline of the wheel begins to subside, the hamster transitions into a phase of intense, calculated labor that most owners will never witness. This is the hour of the hoarder, a time when the cage is transformed into a complex logistical hub. Yet you might see them moving toward their food bowl with a sense of urgent mission, but they aren't there to eat. They are there to transport. This is where the hamster's most famous anatomical secret comes into play: their expansive cheek pouches. These aren't just small pockets. They are elastic chambers that extend all the way back to their shoulders, allowing a single hamster to carry an amount of food nearly equivalent to half their own body weight in one trip. They stuff these pouches until their faces are comically distorted, driven by a deep-seated fear that the abundance of today might vanish by tomorrow. This hoarding isn't greed. It's a biological insurance policy against a desert winter that never comes, a silent obsession with security that dictates every trip back and forth from the bowl to the deepest, darkest corner of their nest. But the work doesn't stop with food. Even in a world of plastic and glass, the hamster remains a master of the subterranean. They begin to dig with a frantic, rhythmic energy, tossing substrate behind them as they attempt to recreate the complex tunnel systems of their ancestors. In the wild, these burrows are essential for regulating temperature and escaping the eyes of predators, and here, that instinct manifests as a constant need to remodel their environment. And then, in the middle of all this frantic activity, something strange happens. They freeze. Total, absolute stillness. A hamster may stand mid-stride or on their hind legs, staring into the void for minutes at a time. To us, they look broken or confused, but in reality, their brain is operating at a peak sensory level. They are scanning the silence, filtering the ambient noise of the house to ensure that their activity hasn't attracted unwanted attention. This sudden pause is the hallmark of a survivor, a moment where the architect and the hoarder stop to let the sentry take over, ensuring that their secret midnight operations remain undiscovered by the sleeping world around them. As the night reaches its deepest point, and the human world enters the stage of REM sleep, the hamster's frantic activity often shifts into a period of quiet observation. You might wake up in the middle of the night to find two tiny obsidian glints watching you from behind the glass, frozen and focused. It is tempting to view this through a lens of human affection, to imagine they are standing guard or watching over you with a sense of loyalty. But the truth of their perception is far more fascinating and alien. To a hamster, you are not a parent or a friend in the way a dog might perceive you. Instead, you are a colossal, atmospheric presence that occupies the highest tier of their territorial map. You are a biological landmark, a mountain that breathes, a source of predictable sounds, and a giant provider of resources. When they stare at you in the darkness, they are performing a high-level assessment of their environment. They are monitoring your breathing and your subtle movements because your state of rest is the ultimate green light for their freedom. In the hamster's mind, you are a part of the landscape that must be managed. They recognize the specific scent of your skin and the heavy, slow vibrations of your snoring as signals of safety. It is much like a wild animal recognizes the rustle of leaves that indicates no predators are near. You are the great provider who replenishes the horde, but you are also a potential variable that must be watched. There is a strange, silent communion in these hours where the smallest resident of the house keeps a watchful eye on the largest. They see you not as a person with a life, but as a benevolent, sleeping force of nature that dictates the boundaries of their universe. This gaze isn't born of sentimentality, but of a sophisticated survival instinct that has integrated you into their world. By watching you, they are confirming that the hierarchy of the room remains stable. You are their giant, their mountain, and their silent partner in this midnight life. A massive, slumbering entity that exists in the periphery of their frantic, focused reality, ensuring that as long as you are asleep, the world remains entirely theirs to explore. As the first fragile threads of amber light begin to fray the edges of the night, the feverish energy of the room starts to dissolve into a heavy, quiet stillness. The frantic whirring of the wheel slows to a final, clicking halt, and the subterranean digging reaches its conclusion as the world outside begins to stir with the sounds of a new day. For the hamster, the blue-tinted freedom of the dark is coming to an end, and the ancient command of the sun is once again taking hold. They perform one last meticulous grooming session, smoothing down their fur and clearing their whiskers of the night's dust, preparing for the long, static hours of the daylight. You might wake up and see them retreating into their burrow, a tiny shadow disappearing into a mound of bedding, leaving behind no evidence of the miles they have run or the complex maps they have drawn in the dark. The cage looks exactly as it did when you fell asleep, a silent landscape of plastic and wood, but we now know that this stillness is a beautiful deception. Behind that quiet exterior lies a world of profound industry and survival that happened right beside you while you were lost in dreams. The yard goes quiet at dusk for the birds, but for this small companion, the room only truly comes alive when the lights go out. It is a powerful reminder that we share our homes with creatures who possess an entirely different reality, a secret life of purpose that functions on a clock we can barely perceive. As you stretch and reach for the light switch, now the hamster is already settling into a deep, restorative slumber, their mission accomplished and their territory secured for another day. Now that you know the truth of what happens at 2 a.m., the simple sight of your sleeping pet takes on a new weight of respect and wonder. Their presence is not just a quiet comfort, but a bridge to a wild, nocturnal world that continues to pulse with life long after we have closed our eyes. So, the next time you hear a faint rustle in the corner of your room in the dead of night, remember that you aren't alone. A small, determined soul is out there, running his marathon and keeping watch over his kingdom until the sun returns to start the cycle all over again.